Arlen Specter lost. How do the elections affect you? Next on Behind the Headlines.
This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to another edition of Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow at the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm being joined on this show by Jerry Strickmatter, who's an associate and a board member of Susquehanna Valley Center, who's serving as co-host while Maura's on vacation. Jerry, thank you for sitting in.
Glad to be here. Exciting guest.
It's nice
be with you today.
Nice to have you here. And what we need to do, of course, we've just gone through a cycle of elections, and we talked a little bit about them beforehand. Let's bring in our resident expert to talk about them now that they've occurred. And we're bringing in Dave Patti. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
Sure. Welcome.
Dave heads up the Pennsylvania Business Council and does a great job at it, and we're so glad to have you back, Dave. You talked a little bit about us, talked a little bit with us about these elections beforehand. We'd like to go and look and see what happened and get your take on it. Of course, the big race that got a lot of attention, of course, was for U.S. Senate. And, of course, it was the loss of Arlen Specter. Goodness, I opened up my copy of The Economist magazine from Great Britain the other day, and there's a full-page article about the Specter race. Of course, Arlen lost, but what's the significance of that, Dave?
It's the end of the era, but I think you put it right. I mean, I think Arlen lost more than Joe Sestak won. 30 years, and Arlen throughout the 30 years was always controversial. For 29 years as a Republican, for 1 year as a Democrat. But Arlen was always his own guy at the end of the day. There was no interest group with whom he was fully aligned or had a perfect voting record. He was with business sometimes, he was with trial lawyers, he was with labor, he was with environmentalists, he was with gun owners, he was with people who would limit guns. I mean, Arlen, and I wouldn't say it was all over the map, but he had his own independent way of thinking about things and approaching things. And he's famous or infamous for Bob Bork and other Supreme Court justices who, with whom he was involved as they went through the confirmation process for controversial decisions stemming back to the Reagan administration.
Of course, you're referring to the fact that Robert Bork at that point was and still is considered one of the most brilliant judges, one of the most brilliant legal minds in America, and of course, because of his position on abortion, the Senate didn't want to confirm him, and he withdrew his nomination before it came to a vote. But of course, Arlen helped torpedo that. But on the other hand, we can probably explain the presence of Clarence Thomas on the bench because of Arlen.
Right, and who doesn't remember him sort of browbeating Anita Hill? I mean, as I said, Arlen, it's hard to classify him as, well, he was always liberal, always conservative, always, and moderate doesn't quite get it because he was going to both sides. But at the end of 30 years, he certainly did a lot of good for Pennsylvania. It's going to be a different Pennsylvania political landscape. Certainly right now, earmarks and clout and seniority and everything that brings are not in vogue with American voters. Pennsylvanians not any different than their counterparts in other states in that regard. And Arlen certainly was the epitome of that era of American politics. So now we go on really with an interesting election. Joe Sestak, who has very much wrapped himself in the mantle of the Obama administration and sort of the new liberal progressive left, and of course Pat Toomey, who is very much the classic current conservative. Both congressional experience. Pat Toomey 3 terms. Joe Sestak currently in his 2nd term. Sestak, a very successful career, 31 years in the Navy, topping as a 3-star admiral. Allegations that, well, he wasn't a great 3-star admiral, notwithstanding, it takes something to be a 3-star admiral. Pat Toomey, very, very successful business person. So we have 2 people who really pose to Pennsylvania voters a real ideological choice and real credentials for the job. It should be an interesting race.
The elections that just occurred also had national attention on the replacement of Congressman Murtha, as well as our gubernatorial primaries.
Right.
What great points came out, in
Well,
in this
the
election
12th,
process?
the 12th congressional district, which is an enormous district in terms of its geographic span, vacated by Jack Murtha, who had been there, since the Vietnam War. He was the first Vietnam veteran elected to Congress, and Jack Murtha, again, very much known for his earmarks, known for the some people would say pork, others would say bacon, but the meat byproduct that he brought back to the state of Pennsylvania, as an appropriator for the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. He wielded tremendous power and influence. Had overcome scandals in the past, Abscam back in 1980 and other things, and continued on. And in that race, what you have is Mark Kritz, a staffer of his, a district director, facing a businessman, Tim Burns, in a special election. And then there was also simultaneously the nomination to a 2-year term, where both of them faced other individuals. Kritz wins, saying, well, I very much come out of the Jack Murtha mold in terms of believing in earmarks and government, but also I am pro-gun, I am pro-life, and I probably would not have voted for the Obama health care bill. So, for Nancy Pelosi to crow that this is a vindication of everything we've done, well, he just repudiated everything you did and is not trying to be a Nancy Pelosi Democrat.
And he proclaims that he's also against the cap and tax bill, the carbon tax.
Right. And so he'll go down for 6 months for sure. He and Burns face off again. For a district that is 65% Democrat, Burns took 45% of the vote, so very, very credible showing by Tim Burns. And he'll be the nominee for the Republicans in a try now for a 2-year term.
Tell us a little bit about the gubernatorial primaries in your mind. Were there key points that came out of this election?
Well, the gubernatorial primaries are very important because not only did it establish that we will have Dan Honorado and Tom Corbett, but established some of the issues. On the Republican side, a two-way race ultimately. Tom Corbett and Sam Rohr, and Sam Rohr very much from the more conservative part of the Republican Party, very much running on a fiscal issue, set of issues, predominantly property tax, for which Sam has long been an advocate for what he defines as reform. But what he did do, what he achieved, while he lost in a 70-30 race statewide and only carried a few counties, what he did achieve was to push Tom Corbett's position on taxes and in fact, to take a pledge, a national pledge, never to raise taxes during his term as governor or sign a tax increase. So Sam certainly established, kind of a base position for the Republican candidate. On the Democrat side, we had a four-way with Dan Honorado, the current county executive in Allegheny County, Jack Wagner, the Auditor General, who seems to be the most often quoted person by Republicans in the state of Pennsylvania for all of his audits criticizing current spending practices and waste and fraud and abuse that he's found. Tony Williams, a state senator from Philadelphia, and then Joe Hoffel from Montgomery County. Dan Honorado took about 45% of the vote, which in a four-way race was a very good showing. Beat the runner-up, number 2 finisher, Jack Wagner, by over 200,000 votes. So, very much a win. But what Tony Williams and Jack Wagner demonstrated was, what kind of a candidate will Dan Honorado be, and where will he stand? Because on education, Tony Williams was much more conservative, and on pension reform, government reform, taxes, very much, I would say that Jack Wagner was more conservative. So we've established that Dan Honorado, favors Governor Rendell's view of combined reporting that would expand the tax base for corporations in Pennsylvania, doesn't want to do anything that would upset the unions in fixing public pensions, doesn't want to do anything that would upset the trial bar in terms of addressing legal liability. That's all on the record now. So from the business community point of view particularly, we very clearly see a contrast in issues. Now, what Honorado managed to do was establish himself very much like Governor Rendell did in 2002. When Governor Rendell ran in 2002, it was the Philadelphia miracle. I rebuilt the city. I made it great again. I rebuilt Center City.
Just the